Great picture. Okay, we are Unit 2, as you've already said, and we're going to talk about question 1. Question 1. So take a deep breath while I'm reading the question. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Alexander Hamilton said in 1780, "The Confederation itself is defective and requires to be altered. It is neither fit for war nor peace." Do you agree or disagree with Alexander Hamilton? What were the strengths and weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation? What problems, if any, did the founders face in writing the Articles of Confederation? What impact, if any, did Shea's rebellion have on the founders' thinking about government? What is the significance of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787? You may begin.
Our unit all agrees with Alexander Hamilton's statement, "The Confederation itself is defective and requires to be altered. It is neither fit for war nor peace." The most notable faults in the Articles of Confederation were the inability to respond to events like Shea's rebellion, its inability to properly tax states, a lack of national currency, and the difficulty to pass national laws. However, the weaknesses of the Articles do not erase the positive accomplishments. Under the Articles, we won a war against a global power, established the post office, and created the name the United States of America. The most important accomplishment was the Northwest Ordinance, which established the idea that we would add states and not colonies. While writing the Articles, the founders faced a multitude of problems, including getting the document finalized and convincing the states to ratify their new government. The first draft of the Articles was presented to Congress in 1775 by Benjamin Franklin, but was never formally considered as rewrites were needed to include other priorities.
Over the course of the next 2 years, through many revisions and arguments, the Articles of Confederation were finalized. After the finalization, the ratification process began, but a unanimous vote was needed to fully implement the new government. By the year 1779, all the states were satisfied by the powers granted by the Articles except for the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland wanted the larger states to give up their claims to Western lands before they agreed to sign the Articles, which angered many of the states that had already signed, some even going as far as discussing forming a new form of government without the state of Maryland. However, when Thomas Jefferson convinced the state of Virginia to give up their claims, Maryland finally agreed to ratify the Articles of Confederation in the year 1781.
Shea's rebellion had a strong impact on the founders' views of government. In 1786, Daniel Shea, a Western Massachusetts farmer and a former captain of the Continental Army, led a march of farmers and veterans like himself who were displeased with the Massachusetts law that caused foreclosures and increased taxes on farmers. The rebels marched on the federal arsenal and closed down the state courts. The federal government was unable to respond due to a lack of funding. Eventually, a private, merchant-funded Massachusetts militia was able to defeat Shays' army. Shays' rebellion showed that the national government needed to be stronger, because if ordinary farmers were able to revolt, anyone could. The rebellion also expressed to the founders that there needed to be adequate ways of generating revenue. 8 years later, in 1794, a tax was imposed on whiskey while under the new document of the Constitution. Similar to Shays, many people were infuriated and decided to revolt. This time, the government was stronger, with President George Washington commanding an army to stop them. This show of force was a message to any future rebel leaders.
The Northwest Ordinance was the first of many major land expansions in the United States. The ordinance added several new states, which included Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. This first expansion came with many new laws and systems, including a standard system and the requirements for creating new states. Without the ordinance, we might not have the 50 states of today, but an assortment of colonies which would cause our country and government conflict between land claims by states and rebellion from disgruntled colonists. The ordinance also allowed for public funding of education through the township system, which is vital to any nation's future. The ordinance even banned slavery and introduced other civil liberties for the first time in the history of the United States. The new land also went for little money, which helped the United States population skyrocket in the 1790s. Overall, the Northwest Ordinance was a vital part in creating the America we have today. We have finished your testimony and are now ready for follow-up.
Tell me again what states were involved in the Northwest Ordinance?
The states that were put in through the Northwest Ordinance was Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
Great. Let's take this into some new directions here. You open up a lot of doors. A lot of things are really important for us to think about. Here's one big question that it raises, this issue raises. Which do you think is more important, more dangerous to a free people? A government that is too powerful, the sort of thing that they were afraid of, or a government that is too weak, the sort of thing they had? Which do you think would be the greater danger to people who wanted to be free?
I believe that a government with too much power would be the biggest threat to a people that wanted to be free, which was one of the reasons why we decided to revolt in the American Revolution. If the people of a community wanted to be free, then obviously the government with more power over the people and taking away more of their rights would be the more threatening government.
Is there a danger to a government being too weak?
I would definitely say yes, because like you could see when the articles were implemented, the government did not have that much power. It was more the states had all the power and the people had a lot of power. And clearly you can be seeing that it had this imbalance and there were multiple factors that went into it being too weak.
The biggest example you could see that a weak government is also dangerous is Shea's rebellion and how they couldn't stop ordinary farmers from raiding a federal arsenal, and they had to fund a private militia instead of calling upon their own army. So that just shows how a weak government can be dangerous.
You often see as well that the middle part of that often works the best, like a Scandinavian government, where nowadays you see governments like North Korea that would be too restrictive, but other governments like a Northern African one that would be not restrictive enough. And these middle ones often implement the strongest like policies that would help the most people.
Very good.
The
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Tanny, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
When you talk about weak central government or strong, what kinds of things specifically are the things that cause you to say a government is weak or a government is strong?
Well, one reason you could say a government would be weak is if they did not have a power to tax, which was, again, another thing during the Articles of Confederation. The only way they got funding was from donations. And when you don't have money, you can't really do much.
I believe that a government is truly weak when they are unable to fend off their own people from attacking the government, especially if the people are extremely ordinary farmers, and even if they do have military training. But like, it's not even the military who is revolting, it's just ordinary people.
Similar to what Sydney has said, I believe that the way that you would determine how strong your government is based on how well you can control your people. If you struggle to control your people, or if you can struggle like to control them too much, then your government probably is too weak, and you probably need to have some sort of reform that would put more power back into the government to control those people.
I personally wouldn't show strength of a government with the ability to control the people. I would more say a government is fulfilling and is doing its correct job when it's allowing the people their unalienable rights, which are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, as Thomas Jefferson stated in the Declaration of Independence.
You could also say that a government's weak if, like in the case of the United States under the Articles, where the states actually had legislative supremacy and more power than the federal government itself, then you could definitely say that a government is weak if the local governments can be stronger than the federal one.
Let's go back to the Northwest Ordinance for a little bit. The Northwest Ordinance, based on what you said, the principle, at least had a principle, the idea that new states could join the Union, and they would join the Union equal to the original 13 states. And so the outcome was the United States became not an empire, but a country of equal states, not a country that dominates others. And yet we find ourselves in the 21st century still with colonies, people who are American citizens who live in Puerto Rico, who live in Washington, D.C., American Samoa, and the Virgin Islands, who pay taxes and are American citizens. If we had a draft, they'd get drafted, and yet they don't get to vote for Congress because they're not American citizens. Do you think that do you think that we should that they should become states? Do you think, should the Northwest Ordinance apply to these American territories?
I believe that territories like Puerto Rico should definitely become states, as they are over the 10,000 people limit and have been paying taxes for America for a very long time now, and have even applied to become states, I believe, more than once, but have been rejected for reasons for the people or just the American government deciding that no, you cannot become a state.
I strongly believe as well that we should allow those states or those colonies to become a state. Like Sydney said, they are all paying taxes and they've tried to implement themselves into our government. And I feel that if you are charging a colony and taxes to just sit there, then it's a violation of their citizens' rights.
What about Washington, D.C.?
DC is also, it is located in Maryland, but it is also like a small sector. And the reason that it's not currently one is due to the fact that the Republican Party would not like to allow more representatives from that area, because DC would definitely vote a Democratic side.
Why do you say that?
Because that's just how their population is split. I mean, they have one of the largest African American populations in our country, and the African Americans in our country tend to vote the Democratic Party more than they do the Republican Party.
So we got one more minute. Rita, what you got for us?
Well, we've just about covered everything. Why do you think, and I'm not sure we can answer this in 50 seconds, why do you think the Articles of Confederation failed to provide for an executive branch of government when it was written?
I think they purposefully wrote it in a way that they wouldn't have an executive or a person of power, because them coming from England, they purposefully wanted to get away from a monarch or a sovereign. So they ended up giving the states a little bit too much power and eventually left themselves pretty much powerless.
Also, yeah, okay. Also, there was just legislative supremacy, and it would have been hard to implement an executive branch and even a judicial branch under the same articles. So it was just way easier to do it under the new constitution, other than amending the articles and making it way different and basically unrecognizable.
If
Great
City of
job.
Grant would like,
I think
could they
she's
add-
already, Malia, I think she's already held up her sign. We have to do what our facilitator says. She has got that poster and that just does us in. So, we have to do that. Thank you so much. Y'all answered and nailed the answers to my questions. Thank you so much. I love how you prepared. I love how you all worked together, but you didn't mind disagreeing with each other, which is great. And I loved hearing your explanations about why some of these sectors of the country should become states. I personally hope that that will happen. But good job, every one of you, good job.
I would echo that. Great discussion of the implications of the Northwest Ordinance for us now, for the introduction of new states. I would think when it's very easy to say, well, we were rebelling against England, so we didn't want anything to do with England. And yet we copied our legislative system almost exactly from the British, from the Senate, the House of Lords, and the House for the House, and even the details that spending bills have to originate in the House of Representatives, copied exactly from the British constitutionalism. So you're right, we were rebelling against England, but we still were English. They still saw themselves as English. So that's a tricky one. And I think you covered enormous detail, enormous information with really great understanding. I enjoyed this conversation a great deal. Good job, all of you.
That'd be, oh, sorry. Too much.
Speak, just don't accept your invitation to move until you're ready.
Hey,
Oh,
tell
Sheila.
Mike Miles that we hope he gets well soon.
I actually, if you noticed me looking at my phone, I was texting him.
Yeah, he's one of our favorite
Hopefully we'll get
judges.
tomorrow.
He's a wonderful human being.
He definitely is. And
Thank you so much for hosting us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for